In the late 19th century, led by the decrepit Qing dynasty, China was a shell of its once glorious past. Many foreign countries began to invade China with the advanced weaponry. The citizens of China did not willingly accept the situation their country was in, and was determined to overthrow the corrupt Qing dynasty and clear the intruders out of China. Therefore, the country fell into absolute chaos. Born on December 26, 1893, in a farming community of the Hunan, China, Mao ZheDong was one of the four children born to the couple of Mao ZheDong and Wen Ximei. As the son of one of the wealthiest farmers in Hunan region, Mao ZheDong had a comfortable childhood. Young Mao ZeDong received his preliminary education at Shaoshang Primary School, but he resented and rebuffed the classical Chinese texts preaching about Confucian morals. Instead, Mao ZeDong was more interested in popular novels rather than the traditional Confucian morals. He even attempted to flee from home to distance himself from Confucian upbringings at the age of 11. However, his attempt failed and his father brought him back home. After his schooling, Mao ZeDong worked full-time in the field along with his father, while also reading voraciously in order to satiate his restless and ambitious mind. He slowly developed a political consciousness after reading a booklet by Zheng Guangying. His political standing was further propelled by the nationalistic spirit of George Washington and Napoleon Bonaparte that he read about among his text collections.
In 1911, Mao Zedong moved to Changsha, the capital of Hunan province, in order to continue his secondary education. In that same year, the Xinhai Revolution arose and it aimed at overthrowing the corrupt Chinese monarchy and setting up a republican government with an elected presidency. Mao Zedong, who was greatly interested in political events, joined the revolutionary activities as a private soldier in the rebel army of the Xinhai dynasty. He later went to join the Nationalist Party Kuomintang. Led by Sun Yat-sen, the leader of the Nationalist Party, the Xinhai Revolution was successful in defeating the monarchy in the southern province, since only the southern province supported the Chinese monarchy.
In 1923, Chinese leader Sun Yat-sen began a policy of active cooperation with the Chinese communists who had grown in strength and number. Spurred on by the promise of a new future for China, Mao Zedong reveled in the political and cultural change sweeping the country. Mao Zedong had supported both the Kuomintang and the Communist Party, but he later adopted Leninist ideas and believed that appealing to the farming peasants was the key to establishing communism in China. He rose up through the ranks of the party as a delegate assembly and eventually became the executive to the Shanghai branch of the Communist Party.
Unfortunately, the death of Sun Yat-sen and the rising up of a new leader of the Kuomintang plummeted the nationalists and communists into disastrous conflict. While the Nationalist Party, led by Chiang Kai-shek, pursued on eliminating the Communist Party, Mao Zedong led the Communist Party on a run from the Nationalist Party's witch hunt for them. From March to September of 1925, Mao Zedong and the Communists raised a peasant army against the corrupt nationalist government. In that September, Mao Zedong led an army of peasants against the Kuomintang but was handily defeated. The remnants of the army fled to Jiangxi province where they reorganized. Mao Zedong helped establish the Soviet Republic of China in the mountainous areas of Jiangxi and was elected chairman of that small republic. He developed a small but powerful army of guerrilla fighters to once again rise up and fight the Kuomintang.
By 1934, with the guidance of Mao Zedong, there was more than 10 regions under the control of the communists in Jiangxi province. Chiang Kai-shek grew fearful of the growing numbers and increasing success. He ordered small raids to attack on the outlying communist strongholds, but it did not discourage or weaken them. Chiang reasoned that it was time for a massive sweep of the region to eliminate the communist influence. In October 1934, Chiang amassed nearly 1 million government forces and surrounded the communist stronghold. Mao Zedong was alerted to the impending attack and therefore prepared the communists for an attack. After intense arguing with other leaders who wanted to conduct a final stand against the government forces, he convinced them that retreat was the better tactic.
For the next 12 months, more than 100,000 communists and their dependents trekked northwest in what became known as the Long March, across the Chinese mountains and swamplands to Yang'an in northern China. It was estimated that only 30,000 of the original 100,000 survived the 8,000-mile journey. Although the communists lost in numbers, they were victorious in what their trek spread and planted seeds of the communist influence across the 10 provinces they marched through. As word spread that the communists had escaped extermination by the Kuomintang, many young people migrated to Yang'an. At Yang'an, Mao Zedong employed his oratory talents and inspired volunteers to faithfully join his cause as he emerged and became the top communist leader. The Long March did not weaken the communists, but only made them stronger in numbers and gain experience to strike back at the Nationalist Party again.
In July 1937, the Japanese Imperial Army began their invasion on China, forcing Chiang Kai-shek to flee the capital of Nanjing, China. Chiang's forces soon lost control of the coastal regions and most of the major cities. Unable to fight a war on two fronts, Chiang reached out to the communists for a truce and support. During this time, Mao established himself as a military leader and with aid from allied forces, helped fight the Japanese. With the Japanese defeat in 1945, Mao Zedong set his ambitious sights on controlling all of China. Efforts were made to establish a coalition government, but China fell into a bloody civil war. On October 1, 1949, in Tiananmen Square, Beijing, Mao Zedong announced the official establishment of the People's Republic of China. Meanwhile, Chiang Kai-shek and his followers fled to the island of Taiwan, where they formed the Republic of China.
After Mao Zedong's address at Tiananmen Square, it was a time of great change. Mao Zedong and other communist leaders set out to reshape the Chinese society. He appointed Lin Baoqi as Secretary General of the Central People's Government, Zhao Enlai as Primer of the Government Administration Council of the Central People's Government, Zhu De as Commander-in-Chief of the People's Liberation Army, and himself as the Chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, Chief of State of New People's Republic of China, and Chairman of the military commissions that control the People's Liberation Army. Mao Zedong also had the people adopt a common program of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference as the policy of the government, as he also tried to establish diplomatic relations with any foreign governments around the world. Any oppositions toward the new government and the laws was silent.
Mao's first step of reform on the new communist country was to introduce a more Chinese form of communism called the Great Leap Forward. In 1958, the goal was to increase agricultural and industrial productions in the People's Republic of China. It was meant to improve the living conditions, economy, and status of the country compared to before. Mao Zedong wanted the People's Republic of China to also transform from an agrarian nation into an industrialized nation in order to compete with other nations of great industries within a period of 5 years. The government took this plan in for a more political way instead of for the benefits of the country's economy and its citizens. Between 1958 and 1960, many Chinese citizens, young and old, were sent into communes to work on either the agricultural fields or in small manufacturings. He encouraged crops to be planted closer together to save spaces for more plantation grounds. Also, Mao Zedong wanted to free China from having to import steel and machineries. The solution Mao Zedong came up with was to encourage Chinese citizens to implant backyard steel furnaces where they can turn scrap metals into usable steel. The results of the Great Leap Forward was a failure. The backyard steel furnaces produced worthless steel and it caused the environmental damages of burning down forests to fuel the smelters. The land was left for erosion and constant heavy plowing and cropping emptied the soil of its nutrients. Many more citizens were sent to work in industries, which left the agricultural fields with less hands to plant and harvest foods. In the next couple of years, the presence of natural disasters such as the flooding of the Yellow River and end of aid from the Soviet Union and coupled with a drought and poor harvest gave way to a famine in the country. Instead of a myriad of agricultural and industrial products, there was a massive decline in both. According to historian Patricia Buckley Ebry's observation, that famine in the late 1959 to 1963 probably led to the death of about 30 million people in China. What was once a 5-year plan was called off after 3 years, and instead, those 3 years were known as the 3 bitter years in China. The failure of the Great Leap Forward weakened Mao Zedong's position, became a figurehead with no power in the Chinese government of the People's Republic of China, and he lost some of his influence on the people, for they blamed him for the famine.
In order to restore his position, Mao Zedong, at the age of 73, along with his ally Lin Bao, attempted to bring a cultural revolution to the People's Republic of China in 1966. The Cultural Revolution's aim was to eliminate any of Mao Zedong's opponents, those in the Nationalist Party in the Long March, and several others which he set the People's Liberation Army and students, the Red Guards, on witch hunts. The aim was also set out to destroy the four olds: old customs, old cultures, old habits, and old ideas. The Red Guards destroyed ancient artworks and texts, burned temples, and beaten the intellectuals to death. Not only was his opponents killed, but many other uprisings and people involved in this riot was killed. Those people included teachers, artists, writers, party leaders, and anybody who spoke out with different revolutionary thoughts to the Cultural Revolution. As a result of this revolution, about half of the millions of Chinese died in this incident, including the destruction of the cultural heritage in China. By September of 1976, several provinces was on the verge of anarchy, and the only way Mao Zedong restored order was by sending in the armies to subdue everyone. Although Mao Zedong appears victorious in the end, on the contrary, he brought more disasters than reforms. The Cultural Revolution would continue on even after his death.
Mao Zedong died on September 9, 1976, after a series of two major heart attacks. His health was deteriorating in his later years due to Parkinson's disease along with heart and lung problems from a lifetime of smoking. However, he wanted to build foreign relationships with Europe, Japan, and United States and make more provisions in the People's Republic of China. Despite his list of unaccomplished goals, Mao Zedong did not make much changes in China towards the end of his life. The legacy that Mao Zedong left behind is a complicated and controversial one. Mao Zedong is forever known as the founding father of the People's Republic of China, but his leadership caused more deaths and turmoils than that of Adolf Hitler's. According to Deng Xiaoping, who led China after Mao Zedong's death, he stated that Mao Zedong's policy was 70% correct because Mao Zedong truly wanted a better future for China. Unfortunately, Mao Zedong's policy plans did not work out, since 30% was due to natural disasters and 70% was due to human errors along the way of carrying out Mao Zedong's policies for China. It was not until after 2 decades of his death did the people blame him for everything that went wrong, although Mao Zedong was only trying to build a stronger communist China.